What up, Buffalo fanatics, Z-Bots, Z here with you live. No, not again. Come on. Man, every time I go live, my internet lags out. What's this? Z-Bot, you gotta start using NordVPN for your streams. It will help speed up your internet. 2-year plan is 70% off at the bfvpn.com, and you get your first month free. Kingpin knows best. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Z-Bot back with you with better than ever internet connection thanks to NordVPN. Best live streams use the best internet connection. Visit the bfpn.com to take advantage of 70% off a 2-year plan with your first month free.
Kingpin, and you're listening to the Air Raid Hour of Buffalo Fanatics Video Experience.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the Air Raid Hour. I am your host, David Tilton, Tilt Money on Twitter, and I'm joined once again tonight by producer Kendall Mursky, as Judge is, who knows where he is? We don't know. We don't know where he is. He's doing something, and we don't know where he is, but that's fine. We're going to hold it down again tonight and get you guys ready for Bills at Lions tomorrow. Kendall, how are you feeling tonight? We are 1 day away from the Bills being in action for the first time on the field against real competition since the AFC Championship game.
Unbelievably excited. So excited I tuned in to watch the Patriots play tonight. Like I am just fiending for football after that Hall of Fame game was just like so underwhelming. I was like, give me more football. I want to see how Mac Jones is. And now I'm like, I don't even care anymore. I just want to know how the Bills are going to do. I want to know all these depth pieces. I want to know everything. It's just been, we've been in the dark for too long, especially not having a preseason last year. It's like, It's unbelievably exciting to have preseason football again. And I never thought I'd feel this way about preseason football, but I do.
And that's a good point. I'm going to hit on that in a second. But before I do, I'm going to welcome in everybody who was here waiting and those who are here now. We got D. Handsome, Matt Ronalski, Don Keith, of course, is in the house, Jessica Tennis, James FX90, Chris Janke is here, Richard Forbes, Jason Humbert, Jay Davis. We've got Jimmy Sheave Overly is in the house, Louis Trammer, Bandita, Javante, the Bills fan, Hulk Smash, AK Cash. What I'm noticing is we got a lot of the people who had been part of this show for a long time are in the house tonight, along with some new ones like Jeff Danger, who's been a new regular of ours, and Caroline Frank, who's also been a new regular of ours. Welcome in, everyone. And you mentioned it, right? No preseason last year. Maybe we took preseason for granted. I mean, look, the people that are in here watching our show, us who do this show, we care about the preseason. Like, for better or worse, you know, most of the casual football fans out there don't care about preseason. But for the fans in here, for the fanatics, followers, that's why we're fanatics, right? We care about the preseason. We care about how some of these guys at the fringe of the roster are going to perform. And we're going to talk about it tonight. We know the Bills play the Lions every year in the preseason. That's their first matchup here coming up. And so let's start by talking tonight about the depth chart that was released. Got a lot of buzz on Twitter today and social media. The Bills game day depth chart for this first preseason game. And we're going to be joined once again by Steve, not in person, but through the interwebs. And what does Steve have to say about the obviously first and most important position here on the depth chart?
Gentlemen, preseason, it is already here. Sean McDermott has come out and he's already said that Josh Allen is not going to play in this first preseason game. And honestly, no problem with that. Josh Allen, Darrell Williams, Deion Dawkins, Mitch Morse, the three big wide receivers, Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders. If they don't play a snap this preseason, I am totally okay with that. If they play like a series or two to try to, season them or get them used to contact, whatever, that's fine. But those guys don't need to play a ton. So I want you guys to talk a little bit about your expectations for the quarterback this preseason game. How much do you play Mitch Trubisky? I think it's important to have Mitch out there to maybe see what you got in the Krumerows and the Hodgins and the McKenzies of the world. Maybe McKenzie, not so much. Maybe McKenzie doesn't play that much at all. Maybe him and Gabriel Davis both get just as much rest, and the Buffalo Bills really run out there with guys like Hodgins and Krumero and Stevenson. So that'll be interesting to look forward to. But my hot take here is you look at the depth chart and Davis Webb is ahead of Jake Fromm. So it appears like Jake Fromm maybe in practice isn't showing the Buffalo Bills what he needs to be showing them. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, do you consider maybe playing Jake Fromm a ton to try to audition him for a trade? I'm looking at a team like Dallas, Dak Prescott with that lat injury that may be more serious than they're letting on, and their backup quarterbacks, not so great. Could the Buffalo Bills, if they play Jake Fromm enough and against backups, he looks good enough, could the Buffalo Bills possibly get their draft pick back, their 5th round pick back, or a 6th round pick, or a 7th round pick in return to Jake Fromm? So what are your thoughts on how much to play each quarterback and thoughts on a possible Fromm deal?
So that's really interesting. And before we get to the reaction here, let's just bring up Hulk Smash with the super sticker here for supporting us here. Hulk Smash, if you want to put a comment in the comment section and get that read, please, by all means, go ahead. We appreciate that super sticker, but go ahead and put that comment in and we'll read that for you. What Judge said was interesting because you and I for this show agreed that we were not going to watch any of Judge's pre-recorded videos ahead of time because we wanted to have a natural reaction to what he was saying. And we both pointed out as we were looking at the depth chart before we went on that Davis Webb was ahead of Jake Fromm, which was quite interesting. And to Steve's point, yeah, I do expect Fromm to play the most out of any quarterback we have on the roster this preseason, audition or otherwise. Fromm's value right now, probably, I'll put it this way. If your value scale is like a 1 to 100, right, for Jake Fromm, he's maybe at like a 10 right now, right? So it's like, does it really matter if he goes down to like a 5 or a 4, where there's more room for him to go up to maybe like a 30 or a 40, right? He's not going to be 100, but I feel like he's so far down on the value scale right now that he really is only a benefit to the Bills if he plays in the preseason and plays well, because even if they don't trade him, okay, it gives them some confidence that maybe they can take into 2022, let's say, looking ahead, if they anticipate he could battle for a backup job. Or like Steve said, maybe the Bills can parlay that performance in the preseason to a trade with a QB needy team. Hulk Smash comes in and says, like the video, go Bills, baby. I would appreciate that. You hit that like button and help us out on the YouTube algorithm. We'd really appreciate it. We've already got over 80 people watching and we're not even 10 minutes in yet. So we can tell that football is back and fans are excited. So yeah, I mean, look, if the Bills, if you told me right now, without Jake Fromm playing in preseason, regardless of how he played, you could get a 6th round pick for him, I'd do it. Even if he played great, I'd do it right now. Just do it. So, Fromm's been kind of a hot button topic throughout the offseason. Some people think he's got the talent to be maybe the backup quarterback. Other people think he stinks. He hasn't been that great in training camp so far from what we've heard. Where do you come out on the Jake Fromm situation? Because I know on my pre-camp 53, I only had 2 quarterbacks, and Steve had Fromm on his. So I'm curious to hear what you think.
Yeah, I actually posted my 53 projection yesterday, maybe the day before, and I put Fromm on there. I have soured on the idea of trading Fromm because I felt like his value was highest pre-draft. Not because of anything he did, simply because teams needed quarterbacks before the draft, specifically younger quarterbacks, and Jake Fromm fits that bill. That being said, he doesn't really have any NFL game tape. Everything anyone would use to assess him is all based on his games from Georgia. So it's very tough to evaluate what's going on with Jake Fromm. I'm still trying to figure out what the plan was when we drafted Jake Fromm in the 5th round. So yeah, I agree with Jimmy here. I think he is the long-term backup option because Mitch is only on a 1-year deal. Until I'm proven otherwise, that's my running assumption. I thought we should have traded him. The fact that we haven't traded him at that draft time kind of tells me that that's how this front office feels about him. They want to see and give him the chance to see out this opportunity as the long-term backup option, and then kind of keep Davis Webb around as that practice squad guy to continuously be that coach on the field like everyone says he is. So I want to see a lot of Jake Fromm this preseason, but to speak to what Judge said, I don't want to see too much of Jake Fromm this preseason because I want to see Trubisky give these guys like Kumaro and Hodgins and Tanner Gentry, some of those like bubble wide receiver guys, a good shot to really showcase their talents. I don't want it to be soured by the likes of Davis Webb or Jake Fromm not giving them proper opportunities on the field to go make plays. So I want to see a steady dose. I don't want to see too much Trubisky because he is our backup. I want him to be healthy in case anything happens to Josh, but I also don't need to see too much of him. And therefore, I want to see some of Jake Fromm. So very wishy-washy on Jake Fromm. Very wishy-washy. But I'm not reading into the fact that Davis Webb is 3rd string and Fromm is 4th string. I think it's simply a courtesy to Davis Webb and everything he has done for the team since being a part of the team. It would be a backhand to the face to Davis Webb to give the 3rd string to Jake Fromm because of 2 weeks of training camp.
Yeah. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I get the idea of wanting sort of a long-term steady option at that QB2, but for us to think, at least at this stage, that is Jake Fromm
in the dark.
Is a shot in the dark. Now, notice I said could be, if you replace that, yes. Is right now, no. Like, he's got to do something in preseason. He's got to prove that he can do that. And like, there's a reason why we're so much more confident in Mitch Trubisky if something were to happen in Josh Allen than when we would be in Davis Webb or Jake Fromm. And, I love the guy, but Matt Barkley while he was here, right? You now have a team that is in a position to win for the short term and the long term. And if something were to happen to Josh and you don't have that backup quarterback situation set up for at least above average success, then you're going to be in trouble. And so I'm not ready to, and maybe it's unfair of me, but I'm not ready to say that can be Jake Fromm yet. And yes, maybe it is unfair of me because we need to see what he can do in preseason against real opposition. But
that's exactly why you're not definitively saying it. You don't.
But I'm also not saying that just because he's on the team now, he has to be the long-term option. There could be another long-term option out there for QB2 that we get in the offseason next year, right? Like we don't know, right? So that's all I'm saying is, like, let's not anoint Fromm the QB2 of the future just yet, just because he's on the team right now. So really interesting situation with the quarterbacks. Obviously, we know Josh isn't playing, as Steve said. So, Mitch Davis and Fromm will be the guys on tomorrow's game. So let's talk about the running back depth chart now, and saw some interesting things there as well. Let's see what Steve had to say about running back.
All right, gentlemen, I want your takes now on the skill positions, the running backs, the tight ends, the wide receivers. I'm going to share a couple of the takes that I want to get off my chest. And number one is Zach Moss. Obviously came up with a hamstring injury in practice the other day. Availability is important to a guy like Sean McDermott. I want to hear your guys' thoughts. could we possibly see Zach Moss fill a TJ Yeldon role early on the season where he's that third inactive running back, just because he's not proving to the coaching staff that he can stay healthy and he's not proving he can stay on the field, and he might not get the reps this preseason. But other than that, I want to hear your guys' takes on who should be playing and how much should they be playing against the Detroit Lions tomorrow night. And as for wide receivers, what are your thoughts on how they should spread the wealth at wide receivers? Again, I think Hodgins, Kumaro, McKenzie, Stevenson, those guys should get the runs. They shouldn't get the runs. That'd be real bad. But they should get the run with Mitch Trubisky. So that now I'm thinking of Lamar Jackson. But they should get a majority of the run with Mitch Trubisky so you can see what they have and what they bring to your offense, because these are the guys who are truly duking it out probably for those last 2 or 3 wide receiver positions. So let me know with what you think about the wide receiver competition and the tight end competition as well. I'm looking forward to seeing my boy Nate Becker, Tommy Sweeney back out in the football field, and Quentin Morris as well.
He had to throw in the Nate Becker.
Judge loves Nate Becker. Like, it's like you were still probably in elementary school when this happened, but Judge really loved some Brandon Riley a couple years back, and
right,
like his guy the whole preseason, like it was Brandon Riley. And for me, a couple years ago, it was Jaquan Johnson. I was like, I want to see Jaquan Johnson in the preseason. And if you remember, he did have an interception, I think, in his rookie year in the preseason.
I think he was called back, but yeah, he did have an interception.
What is this guy doing? Like, is he watching his own show? Like, okay. He's like coaching us up. With the producing.
Excuse us.
Are you happy? Are you happy now, Steve? We got your overlay in there. Okay. But anyway, as far as the running backs, he's right about Zach Moss, right? It's not like the ankle injury was necessarily like his fault by any means, because you don't want to label a guy as injury prone, and that term gets used a lot. But now he's not really available with this hamstring injury, and we saw the clips of Singletary. We've heard the reports of Breida looking quick and fast. There's obviously a huge contingent of Antonio Williams supporters out there. Mm-hmm. So the running back room is really, I mean, is it like Singletary having a chance to take a stranglehold on this sort of quote RB1, even though in my mind there really isn't an RB1 on this team? And how do you expect the running back reps to shape out in this game? I expect us to see a lot of Antonio Williams, and I expect us to see a decent amount of Matt Breida too, I think, in this game.
So I'll start with the Zach Moss stuff, and I need to come out here and say I am a Zach Moss stan. Like, I will forever stan Zach Moss. I see it with him. I know a lot of people don't. I see you, Jimmy, in the chat. I know you don't see it, and you think it's going to be a miss by Bean. I think we got to give him a little more time. It's a 3rd-round pick. He's only played, half a season without even a preseason. I think the thing with him and calling him injury prone is just far too soon. He had some injury history at Utah. Very true. I had a conversation with Alex Lucci, the thigh doctor, BF Zone, and when we talked about injuries, he said there's a difference of being injury prone and getting unlucky. And people with bone fractures or anything, sprains, anything like that, that's just getting unlucky. Mm-hmm. If you have a bunch of soft tissue injuries, kind of like Matt Milano has had, a lot of hamstrings, pecs, like all the muscle soft tissue injuries, that's more of like an injury prone thing. Mm-hmm. And with Zach Moss, it's been turf toe, it's been ankle, and now it's just a little hamstring issue. I don't want to look into this hamstring issue too soon because McDermott called him day to day. I don't think this is going to be something that's going to keep him off the field until the regular season. I think it's going to keep him off the field for this game against the Lions. So I don't want to go off too quickly on Zach Moss saying he's injury prone and we're just not going to see him and Devin Singletary is going to run away with the job, all that stuff. I still think it's going to be by committee, like you said. But specifically for this preseason game, this 110% opens the door for Antonio Williams. And this gives him an opportunity to prove why he deserves a spot on this roster. And I know a lot of people saw him in that Week 17 game, and they were like, why can't Zach Moss run like this? Because that is essentially what we want Zach Moss to run like. So if he can show it again in a preseason game, running as RB3, maybe behind Breida, who's kind of the committee with Singletary for the first half or first quarter, whatever it is, Williams is going to get some decent looks. And I think because of that, he's going to bolster his value to the Buffalo Bills this training camp in this preseason. So really, this is a huge opening for Antonio Williams to capitalize on.
What do you think about this comment from Jimmy? He says, if anybody should be on the trade block, it's Moss. Maybe Bean can con some other sucker and get a fourth. I mean, he's already a third. You're not going to get a fourth probably for him, for a guy who hasn't played a ton. And also, I also don't think that that's in their plans. I'll just say I'll be surprised if that happens. If it does happen, then okay. But I would be very surprised. I think the fact is that, again, like you said, he's only going to in his second year. He hasn't had enough time. The Bills really don't have a traditional RB1 in that in the sense that we kind of think of from years past, and even in like the current sort of landscape of the NFL. How many guys are really like RB1 bell cow type of guys? Like, there's like 4 or 5 guys you can name, like McCaffrey, Barkley, right? Zeke, and Zeke even lost some run to Pollard last year. There's not a ton of guys, right? Aaron Jones, even as good as he was, split time with Jamal Williams.
Dalvin
guys
Cook with Alexander Madison.
Yep.
Camaro with Latavius Murray.
Exactly.
The list goes on. Committee is what's happening in the NFL.
Exactly. So the Bills are going to do that as well, but they just don't have that elite type of upper echelon guy on the team. So they are going to need Moss to contribute. They're going to need they're going to need all those guys to kind of get the most out of their skill set. And they're going to really have to rely a lot on really just making the most of what they can do and being efficient, because they don't necessarily have that top end, talent that some of these other guys do. So I think most people in the comments section agree Moss isn't going anywhere. Says Mr. Diggs, Moss isn't going anywhere. Here's a comment from Jimmy: Singletary, Breida with Williams as a supplement. Moss isn't needed. So Jimmy's clearly anti-Moss. A lot of people are pro-Moss in here. We got Richard Forbes saying if the line would get off harder, then Singletary would get more yards. Yeah, we talked about this too on past shows, how the Bills had too many negative running plays last year, and you could see so many times where like Singletary would just. You remember when McCoy, when he like had nowhere to go, he just kind of like fall on the ground. Like you just see that a lot of times with Singletary last year. Like there was just nowhere for him to go. We got Matt Mallory saying Moss is better than Singletary. This is a fun debate amongst Bills Mafia, right? Is this Singletary versus Moss debate?
Preference. It's all preference.
And then you got the Antonio Williams people on the side as well, like saying, hey, don't forget about Antonio. So it is, I wouldn't say it's wide open as far as like it could be anybody's quote RB1 job, but it's going to be wide open for reps, I think.
100%. And this also opens the door for Breida. I mean, this is why you sign a guy like Breida. Like, they want to do a committee. And this is exactly why when you draft back-to-back third-round running backs, you're not going for that, really close to bell cow guy and then the reserve guy as your committee. You're going for, no, we just got 2 decent dudes and they're just going to split time. We're going to go with the hot hand. You're like tripling down on that by signing Breida. So now Breida has his opportunity to prove why he should be part of the immediate committee to Singletary at that top spot. And maybe Moss is going to have to be that reserve guy. So that's the kind of dynamic that it's creating, constant competition at the top end of the running back room. So that's why I like what we did this offseason. And that's why we can't get rid of Moss, because the part of the plan is to keep a holistically like above average running back room. Nothing that's, blowing you out of the water, outstanding, but just above average, doing what they're needed to do.
You're almost like trying to like collectively put together like one above average running back with all the reps you get out of those guys. That's what you're trying to do. All right. So receivers, Judge mentioned he wants to see some Kumaro. He wants to see some Hodgins. He wants to see Stevenson get some run. Obviously, Stevenson, there's a couple interesting things we noted on the depth chart. McKenzie is listed as a second string slot receiver behind Beasley. Brandon Powell is listed as a slot receiver on the depth chart. And you know who is not listed as a slot receiver on the depth chart is Marquez Stevenson. He is listed as an outside receiver on the depth chart. Now, keep in mind, it's one depth chart. It's just a game day depth chart for this Lions game. But I found it a little interesting that they listed they listed Stevenson as an outside receiver. And for me, like Judge said, I'm really interested to see what Stevenson can do if he can get time with Trubisky. That's going to be important because you're going to want someone with some capability throwing you the ball to see what you can do. Hodgins and Kumaro, I expect to be out there battling, maybe battling for a roster spot, has been well discussed already. But the thing that's going to be interesting to me is Brandon Powell, right? Because how much opportunity is he going to get to return kicks and punts throughout 3 games in the preseason? Does this guy have a real chance to make the team as a kick and punt returner? We talked about McKenzie is by far and away leading the competition over Stevenson, but is there a chance that a guy like Powell could maybe force the Bills to think about keeping that sort of reserve kick returner, punt returner close by? Or do you think that it's just too much of an uphill climb for him? And then I definitely want to get your thoughts on Kumaro because it's been a hot topic of Bills Mafia lately.
It has.
You've seen it as far as like, oh, he can be the wide receiver too, to this guy shouldn't even be on the practice squad. And let's not forget, he's been cut and re-signed by the Bills. He's been cut and re-signed by multiple teams in the last 2 years. So maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but where do you see the reps going, and who do you want to see get reps in this game?
So at the beginning, I agree with Steve where he said, I don't really even need to see our key guys. I want to see the guys that we're trying to gauge who's going to be the back end of this wide receiver room. So I want to see guys like Kumaro. I don't even need to see McKenzie, but if he's in, I wouldn't mind. Kumaro, McKenzie, Davis, Hodgins. I want to see those 4 guys specifically be shuffled in with the ones for this game, which is going to be Mitchell Trubisky. I want to see how they play with Trubisky at quarterback. I want them to have every opportunity to show how good they can be with a starting caliber quarterback like Trubisky. I want to see how they feel in this offense. I want them to have every shot to prove their worth. And I don't want to hear any excuses about, Kumaro doesn't look good because Jake Fromm's throwing him the football, or, Hodgin looks great because Josh Allen's throwing him. I don't want to hear those excuses. I want it to be an even playing field. And that's the way I think it would be best to evaluate those wide receivers. So I don't even need to see Beasley, Diggs, or Sanders. There's just no need. Davis, I don't think any of us really need to see it with Davis, but he's a second-year player. He should be playing in the preseason. On to the Brandon Powell talk. When you scroll down and you look at the special teams listing, he is the 3rd kick and punt returner. And based off reports from, I believe, even like Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot, they've said he's been pretty underwhelming in camp as a returner. And he's taken a back seat to Stevenson, who himself has been underwhelming in camp. So I do think it's just going to be an uphill battle for him. And it's unfortunate because he was literally brought in for this specific role, not necessarily to fill in a role as a wide receiver, but it does appear to be an uphill battle for him. But I would like to see, like we said with the whole Stevenson thing, I do really want to see him get some time, maybe on the tail end, be mixed in like a little bit, kind of like a McKenzie role with the Trubisky group. I would like to see that a little bit. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I have heard that Lance Lenoir has been looking pretty good and he's going to surprise people on Friday. So I'm eager to see that. Now, Jake Kumaro. Jake Kumaro. I'll lay it on the field this way. I think Jake Kumaro at best is going to be our wide receiver 6. I think the Bills definitely really like him. I think there's a reason he's still around. Every report we've heard about him from the coaching staff and everyone on the team that talks about him talks about how excited they are to have him back in the room and how surprised they are that he hasn't stuck around in other places and he hasn't really found a true spot. That being said, there's a reason for him not finding a true spot. I know people say him over Hodgins because he actually has experience. He actually has experience in this league, but that experience is really limited to special teams experience and 300 yards over like 4 accrued seasons. I'm not, barking up any trees saying I have 400 yards in 4 seasons. That's nothing really to be valued. Yes, he understands what it's like to play in the NFL, but with Kumaro, I stand in a place where I need to see it with my eyes before I believe it, because there's been a lot of reports about how great he's played through training camp so far, but a lot of those reports are coupled with it was also a great throw by Josh Allen. And
Mhm.
he got bailed out by a beautiful throw by Josh Allen, put in the perfect spot, and he just, made the play on the tail end of it. There's something to be said about him making the play on the tail end of it, but you can't make that play without your quarterback making a great throw. So I want to see how he does with Mitch Trubisky specifically.
Mhm.
I want to see how he does against other ones in the league. So against, I guess, maybe a Jeff Okuda on the Lions. I'm not sure who their other cornerback is on the other side, but I want to see how he does against not Buffalo Bills players, because you're practicing against these guys all the time. You know their tendencies, you know how to attack their weaknesses, things like that. So I want to see how he fares against a team he's unfamiliar with, or maybe slightly familiar with because it's his time in Green Bay. But point being, I really want to see it to believe it with Jake Kumaro before I jump on this bandwagon. It's just too soon for me. We don't need to get this hype over him before even seeing him in preseason action. I know a lot of people are hyped because of the open practice that he had on Saturday, and people got to see it with their eyes, so it's understandable. But for me, I need to see it with my eyes first before I buy in.
Dean Marlowe revenge game against Jake Kumaro? Maybe.
I didn't think about that.
Richard, just getting back to the room, he says, so Till, if Singletary gives you 6 yards a carry again, is that good for you? Yeah, he's never averaged 6 yards a carry. So
I think he was close rookie year, but never got to 6.
I think he was just over 5 his rookie year, and he was under 5 last year. So if he get 6, sign me up, Richard. Definitely, for sure. I'm with you on the Kumaro hype train. I'm not aboard it yet. I mean, I'm happy that the reports are good on him, but I would rather hear I'd rather hear glowing reports about guys like Hodgins and Stevenson than I would Kumaro, just because of the investment the Bills have made in those guys.
Exactly.
Right now, if Kumaro ends up being the real deal and he's a late bloomer and he just needs a chance, then okay, great. If it works out for him, great. But like you said, he's been around the league. He's been cut by multiple teams. Maybe he's late in figuring it out. Maybe he's finally putting it all together. We will see. In the preseason, we'll find out, right? We'll find out if he can make some plays with Mitch slinging him the ball. And I'm really going to be interested to see this Kumaro versus Hodgins. I guess we'll call it a Kumaro versus Hodgins kind of battle in camp, because they, again, like you said, similar statures, similar type, I guess, of receiver, but then the special teams ability of Kumaro right now, you would think that maybe he has the edge. So
yeah, I think with the camp and all the reports, the special teams stuff, I think that definitely gives him the edge right now. And I would be naive to say he doesn't have the edge right now, but I want to see it first. I actually think a sneaky thing to look for is if Hodgins plays on special teams. If Hodgins plays on special teams, that's a notch, that's a check mark in the right box. That's
for
something
sure
that would bode well for him and would push him back to even with Kumaro in my eyes. But obviously it's going to depend more on just playing those snaps and what he does with those snaps.
And a lot of this could come down to, like we've been discussing a lot over the last month, is will the Bills break the norm and keep 7 wide receivers on the roster this year? I don't think they will, but if they do, does that mean that they would potentially keep 2 guys with similar skill sets in Kumaro and Hodgins, even though by and large they're very similar style? I don't know. So
and like
we
talked with Truth to Hearts last week, that would actually mean keeping 3 similar guys, because that's also Gabe Davis kind of archetype. So maybe that's a reason you don't keep 7, or if you do keep 7, maybe that's why Stevenson gets on the roster. And at that point, it just becomes airy.
I think if you do keep 7, Stevenson has to be one of the 7, right? I mean, if he's going to be, if he's if he's outplaying Powell as a kick and punt returner, then like you want to put him on the roster, you want to use him as like your backup kick and punt returner, then he's got to be the guy if he keeps 7, I think. Tight end. This one's interesting. But before we do, we got Jeff coming in again. This is now back-to-back shows. Jeff is the man coming in with the super chat. So we're going to get to his right now. He says, I love the underdogs. I want to see Obata shine. His story is unbelievable. Perfect fit for Buffalo. Always the blue-collar underdogs. Would love to see him tear it up. And that is such a good point because like I said, we haven't seen Steve's video yet on the front 7, but I have a feeling I'm assuming he's going to mention Obata. Everyone's talking Obata. Yeah. Everyone's talking Obata. Everyone's kind of now starting to put them on their 53-man projections, finding a way to get Obata on this roster. And Jeff's right, and it's a good comment. Want to see Obata shine. His story is unbelievable. He's a great fit, and he's performing from what it sounds like as well. So all of those things in combination I agree. Would love to see him tear it up. And thank you, Jeff, as always. Big supporter of ours, and we really appreciate it. So tight end, Kendall. Tommy Sweeney is the guy I'm looking at here in this game. I know Judge is going to be excited about Becker. But look, Dawson Knox has the dropsy still. Hollister, he's a vet. We kind of know what he is at this point. I'm excited to see Tommy Sweeney come all the way back from the complications he had with the COVID stuff from last season to going back to his rookie year where he was kind of thrust into action early on because of injuries to other guys. And he's never really had a good chance to showcase himself throughout an entire regular season. So this has got to be a big moment for him, right? Mm-hmm. Coming back from missing the entire year last year and getting to come back and play in this game. Honestly, he's the guy I want to see in this game. I want to see what he does. A lot of debate around who's going to be the third tight end, assuming we do keep 3 tight ends. I've seen, people talk about, well, maybe Reggie Gilliam will be the third tight end, or maybe Quentin Morris can make a push, or a guy like Nate Becker can make a push, or maybe we only keep 2 tight ends. Like, probably isn't going to happen, but there's still a little bit of this cloud around Tommy Sweeney. Some people kind of feel like should be the tight end 3. Other people feel like he's got to earn that spot again. And that's why, for me, I'm rooting for him, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he does need to earn it, but I am rooting for him to do well. So what do you make of the tight end mix for this first game, and who are you looking at?
So I need to piggyback off what you said, because I definitely am rooting for Tommy Sweeney. I 100% am rooting for that guy. I love, like Lewis says, I love that he can block. Like he's a blocker first as a tight end. And he was a pretty good, from what we saw in his rookie season, he was a pretty admirable pass catcher as well. He got open. He knew how to separate. Catching was a bit of inconsistency, kind of similar to the Dawson Knox stuff. But he's third string tight end. It's not necessarily as much of a necessity or as an expectation as it is with Dawson Knox. So definitely rooting for Tommy Sweeney, and I'm excited to see what he does tomorrow night. But the player that I'm more interested in assessing or even comparing to Tommy Sweeney is Reggie Gilliam. I think although they moved Gilliam to fullback, the way this team uses a fullback is not like the traditional I formation or like offset I formation. That's not how we run our offense anymore. It's more of, the shotgun detached tight end who's kind of almost a personal protector, standing like 1.5 yards behind and in between the guard and tackle in that little no man's land area. That's what our fullback, like a modern day fullback, does. And that's kind of what Dawson Knox does. So I see Reggie Gilliam kind of as the Dawson Knox backup in a way. Obviously, the actual backup is Hollister, but in run type, yes, H-back style for Gilliam. Exactly. And that's kind of what Knox does. In run type sets, in the shotgun formation, I want to see what Gilliam does. I want to see how they use him as a movable piece, even on play action from the shotgun, roll him out into the flats. I want to see how they use him as a weapon, because I believe in his first NFL touchdown, I think it was like week 2 last year, it was in a very similar type play as I just described, where it's kind of that movable piece, and then they leak him out into the flats and he's wide open. So I'm really just excited to see how they use Reggie Gilliam, especially after officially designating him as a fullback. And I'm curious to see if they would only keep 2 tight ends because they have Reggie Gilliam and he's technically a fullback, but he can play that same kind of like quasi fullback tight end type of role for this team. And to double down on the point, I think that this could be done simply because of what unfortunately happened to Tommy Sweeney. I don't think he's a guy that many teams would take the chance and try and submit a waiver claim for. I think he's someone that we can safely get onto the practice squad because of the health concerns. I don't think a lot of teams are trying to take that risk. Obviously, the Bills know exactly how healthy he is and how ready for football he is today and beyond, but not many other teams in the league are privy to that knowledge. So I think the Bills kind of have that in-house secret, and they're okay with exposing him to the waiver claims process and getting him onto the practice squad. Of course, this is all where I stand before tomorrow night, but that's kind of where my head's at right now. I kind of have Gilliam just a slight notch above Sweeney because of that versatility at that weird H-back tight end role.
I want to ask you 2 questions that came from the comments section. Or one's more of a reaction that I'm going to turn into a question. D. Handsome says, I think they're going to give Knox all a preseason to shine. This is a tricky one, right? Because Knox is your tight end 1, right? He's tight end 1 on the depth chart, but we know he's had the drops in practice. So how do you, if you're the Bills, treat Dawson Knox in the preseason, knowing that he's had issues catching the ball in practice? And look, you and I and Steve talked about this in like our private DMs. Like the Bills, the Bills Twitter, the Bills social media went out of their way to basically highlight Dawson Knox catching a wide open ball from Josh Allen for like 10 yards. They are really trying to like get this guy's confidence up. And as Pierre said multiple times, it's a mental thing with him. So what do you do if you're the Bills with Dawson Knox in the preseason? Do you let him play a lot? Do you not play him a lot because he's your tight end 1? What do you do with Knox in the preseason?
It's definitely a healthy balance. You got to find that healthy balance, that moderation. I think the key with Dawson Knox is kind of treat him like you would with like Gabriel Davis. You know that you like this player. You know that he's going to be a steady contributor for this offense. And you need to get him acclimated to football shape, knock the rust off, all of those cliches. But you also don't want to get him injured. So there's that healthy balance. For Knox, I feel like I don't think there's going to be a game where he plays less than 2 drives. I feel like he, at the very least, needs to have at least 2 drives per preseason game because, like you said, he needs to get that confidence. But I don't know how many more drives past even like the 3rd drive, hypothetically, he would get. I think he's too important to what they want to do on offense. And you guys can check it out, albeit it did kind of get taken down a little bit yesterday. Clay and I did a film session, and the tail end was on Dawson Knox, his kind of travesty of a game against the Steelers. But you see, he's actually a very good blocker, a very willing blocker. That athleticism and that size and strength that he possesses is really above average and doesn't get spoken about enough. So I do want to see him get work, but at the same time, I think we kind of know what we have in Dawson Knox to a sense. There's just the refinement to obviously the pass catching side of things, where I do want to see at least 2 drives a game from him to try and knock the rust off.
Yeah, tight end's gonna be an interesting one. Like we said, like is it like Sweeney gonna do anything? Are guys like Bug Howard gonna make any noise? Reggie Gilliam, like you mentioned, Quentin Morris, Nate Becker. Like it's probably the weakest position group we have, top to bottom, on the entire roster. So we'd love to think Knox can be that guy. Like we said, he's the tight end 1 on the depth chart for now, but he's gotta hang on to the ball. So all right. The guys up front handling the blocking for Trubisky in this game, handling the blocking for the running backs, and giving those quarterbacks time to throw to these receivers. The O-line rotation for this game, taking a quick look at the depth chart before we get to Judge's take, the starting left to right line, while it's not the same configuration that we kind of all thought it might. Well, I thought it would be in the offseason. It is the same 5 guys. So you've got Dawkins, Feliciano, Morse, Ford, Williams. I thought Ford would be at left, Feliciano at right. Okay, fine. They're switched, but it's those 5 guys at the top of the depth chart to start. And some other interesting things here, right? You got Ryan Bates listed as a backup center, which I guess is not a surprise. Jack Anderson down on the depth chart there. And the guys they brought in really don't play center. Butker there as the second string right guard. Interesting that a guy like Jamil Douglas is the second string left guard over a guy like Jordan Devy, who was on the team last year. And then you got Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle listed both on the depth chart as left tackles, with our guy Bobby Hart listed as the second string right tackle. So let's hear what Judge has to say about this O-line depth chart, and then we'll react to it.
All right, gents, the big uglies, the offensive line. Obviously, Deion Dawkins has just recently come back from COVID. You're not going to see him tomorrow night. I doubt you're going to see Darrell Williams. And with Mitch Morse's concussion history, I doubt you're going to see a lot of Mitch Morse as well. And I'm honestly, as I mentioned in the quarterback video, fine with those 3 guys not seeing a lick of the football field on Friday or at all this preseason, quite honestly. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for this guy right here in the photograph and our other 5th round pick, Tommy Doyle, to get some run. I think that Spencer Brown and Tommy Doyle should be playing the first 3 quarters of every football game in this preseason. Spencer Brown at left tackle, Tommy Doyle at right tackle. These are small school developmental prospects, and I want them to get as much seasoning as possible before the season starts in case they're thrown into a role where they have to actually contribute this season. I think it's what's best for their development. The fourth quarter is when you can bring in Bobby Hart and Cyrus Tuateli. Like, I don't want to see Bobby Hart as my starting right tackle on Friday night. Like, I'll be disappointed if I see that. Probably will see it based on the depth chart. And that's something that we should talk about as well. Bobby Hart, the number 2 right tackle. Like, is he really the number 3 because Spencer Brown's the number 2 right tackle? Let's hope, because Tommy Doyle's over there listed as a third string left tackle, not a backup right tackle. So that's a little bit of concerning news with the depth chart. And then obviously I want to hear you guys' thoughts on guards. I think that these guards should all be playing. Feliciano, Lamp, Butker, Ford. They should all be getting run, and they should all be getting plenty of playing time because they're all competing for jobs. Nothing is given to those guys, in my opinion, based on the reports coming out of camp so far. So let's see what those guys got. I hope to see a lot of Ryan Bates at center. I hope to see a lot of Jack Anderson at guard in the second half of these football games as well. So it should be super interesting. In terms of the interior of the offensive line, the best 3 guys get the job, right? Like, it's going to be Butker, Bates as backups probably. Then it's Ford and Feliciano. And that leaves Forrest Lamp, who's now 3rd string on the depth chart, a guy that they forgot to even put on the original depth chart. They had to go out. They had to put him back on there as the 3rd string right guard. So Forrest Lamp, could he be trade bait? We've traded Russell Bodine. We've traded Marshall Newhouse. So talk a little bit about that and just what your expectations are for the offensive line in general.
So it's interesting, as different as Judge and I may appear on our how we react to things and how we talk about things, we actually oftentimes end up coming to the same conclusions, just in a different way. So it's funny that he noticed the Bobby Hart thing, and I have to agree with him. I want to see Doyle and Brown bookend that line for majority of the game, right? I want to see Spencer Brown playing left tackle for most of the game, and I want to see Tommy Doyle playing right tackle for most of the game. If you want to mix in Bobby Hart later in the game, fine. If you want to mix in and rotate guys around, and you want to put maybe you want to put Tommy Doyle, give Tommy Doyle a chance to play left tackle at some point in the game, and have Bobby Hart play right tackle, like, I'm fine with that too, right? But those guys need to be playing a lot. And I also have to agree, I'd like to see some Jack Anderson, right? I don't know how much Jack Anderson is going to play. Forrest Lamp has been banged up. Butker and Bates are going to get a lot of run, but Jamil Douglas is a guy who's listed 2nd on the depth chart now at left guard. So we can't forget about him. He's probably going to get a lot of playing time as well. So the interior is going to be interesting. I do expect that you're going to see Bates play maybe almost the entire game at center, and then maybe see Gauthier come in at the very end. But the Bills really don't have a lot of options at center with Mitch Morse out, as far as spreading the wealth here in the preseason. Like it's going to have to be a ton of Bates and then Gauthier, and then maybe at some point, maybe not in this game, but maybe in the second or the third game, maybe Jack Anderson gets some reps at center. We will see. So how do you want to see the reps kind of shake out with this? Because I kind of agree with Judge on this one.
No, I'm definitely with you guys on this one. I want to see as much of Brown and Doyle as possible. I do want them to get as many meaningful snaps, meaningful preseason snaps against starters, like starting caliber players in the NFL. It's not necessarily guaranteed. I do believe the Lions said that they're going to play a majority of their starters. So I want them to take advantage of that and really let these guys see the pace and the speed of the NFL level. So I think it's very valuable to throw these guys into the fire and see if they sink or swim. I really do want to see Brown and Doyle get a lot of run in the first game. As for the interior, absolutely baffled by the way the depth chart looks. I believe in the last pre-recordings, or even maybe last Thursday, a week ago, Judge asked us about Jamil Douglas, and I kind of poo-pooed it because I was like, Ford and Feliciano, they have the flexibility, and Butker, they all have the flexibility to play left, right, and a couple of them have the flexibility to play center. So I kind of poo-pooed the idea of Jamil Douglas, but here he is as second on that left guard. So yeah, it really begs the question, what's going on with Forrest Lamp? And I know he's injured right now, but it does beg the question, what's going on with Forrest Lamp? Like you said with Jack Anderson, I know you said you don't expect him to get some snaps at center in this game. I want to see it though. I do.
This game.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to see it. I like, if he's gonna be fourth string guard, I'd like to see him get some run at center. What's the harm? We need to see what this guy is. I know Perino has been somewhat underwhelmed by him, and he's like borderline labeled him a practice squad player already. But there's a lot of time to change that opinion and change that narrative. So I'd like to see Jack Anderson get out in front of that.
I think because we don't really know for sure, but I think if Jack Anderson has gotten any reps in practice at center, then you might to this point, then you might be right. But if he hasn't, then I would be surprised that, So it just will depend if he has gotten any reps there. The ref comes in with a super chat here, says, does a picture of Josh Allen in shorts have more legacy than Tom Brady's 7 Super Bowl rings? Asking for a friend. I actually don't know if this is a Pats fan or a Bills fan. Or maybe a Bucks fan. Like I honestly don't know if they're trolling with this question or if they're like actually.
I think the picture is Josh Allen.
Okay, well then he must really like Josh Allen in shorts. I would say.
My answer is it depends who you ask.
It depends who you ask. It depends who you ask, and so yeah, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, right? But anyway, let's move to the defensive side of the ball now. We've got 2 segments left. We're going to talk front 7. And then we're going to talk secondary a little bit. And I know Judge didn't do a recording on linebackers, but maybe we'll just throw in a quick tidbit on linebackers. So, well, actually, no, he probably put him in the front 7. I'm an idiot. So let's hear what Judge has to say about the front 7 going into this game.
All right, let's move on, guys, to the defensive line. And just like before, there's a lot of veterans on this defensive line. Jerry Hughes, Mario Addison, Ed Oliver. I don't really need to see them this Friday or even really at all this preseason. If Sean McDermott wants to throw them out there and get them some contact, that's fine. Starlo Delele should probably play at least a couple series, I think, in every game just to get his legs back under him. But what I really want to see, and this is my take, is I want to see these young guys, Boogie Basham, Gregory Rousseau, Justin Zimmer, AJ Epinesa, F.A. Obata. Obviously, Vernon Butler and Harrison Phillips are thrown into that mix too. I want to see these young dudes up against the team's starting offensive line. I want to see them up against the ones. Put Basham and Rousseau right out there, Epinesa right out there. I want to see what they have against the ones. If they're not going against the ones, if they're not going against even like the 2s, I could care less like who's out there, right? Like when if Gregory Rousseau is out there in the 4th quarter getting sacks on people, that's not telling me that Gregory Rousseau is ready. I want to see these dudes up against the starters, rest the veterans, put those young dudes up against the best that the other team is willing to throw out there and see what they got. And I also want to hear you guys' take on Harrison Phillips being behind Vernon Butler on the depth chart. I think as a Bills fan, we're all ripping our hair out right now with the thought of Justin Zimmer and Vernon Butler staying and a guy like Harrison Phillips leaving. I think we'd all like to see Butler be the one who leaves instead of Phillips. And as for linebackers, like, dude, we saw what our defense looked like last year with Edmonds and Milano injured. Don't let them play. Just if you want to get them used to tackling again, play them a couple series in 1 or 2 games, like that's fine. But don't want to see him. Even AJ Klein. I want to see Dodson. I want to see Adams. I want to see Joe Giles Harris. Those are the guys that I want to see up against the best of the best, duking it out for maybe that versatile backup linebacker position. And I also want to hear your thoughts on Andre Smith being ahead of both Adams and Giles Harris on the depth chart. Are we underrating special teams a little bit? And would you be concerned if Adams and Matakevich filled out the bottom half of the roster as opposed to maybe a Adams or a Giles Harris? But what are your guys' thoughts on the front seven here?
So my first reaction to that is, yeah, I don't need to see Hughes. I don't need to see Addison in this game. I'm with Judge. I say throw the young guys out there against the first string if they play for the Lions, right? I don't know. I haven't looked too much into what the Lions are planning to do, but I imagine something similar to what the Bills are doing. Don't need to see Addison. Don't need to see Hughes. Do you want to see Basham? Do you want to see Rousseau? Do you want to see Epinesa? What he said about Harrison Phillips and Vernon Butler, I'm honestly like, look, I'm not surprised. I'm really not. Like, I had Vernon Butler on my pre-camp 53 because of the cap situation with him. Harrison Phillips is a guy that we all love and we all want to root for. But again, his body of work of playing above average football in the NFL is not there, right? Like, he hasn't really done that. He's had some good moments at the end of, his rookie year, then gets hurt, and then really never got all the way back last year. So I love Harrison Phillips, the guy. I'm rooting for him, and I want nothing but the best for him, but I'm not surprised at where he stands on the depth chart right now. Now, I'm not saying Vernon Butler is good either. Like, I know that he's had his issues, and we all know that Richard Rush, what was the famous comment? Vernon Butler is ass. Like,
Yeah.
he's hot ass, as Steve would say, right? So, like, it's not a great situation right now if you're a Bills fan and you're looking at the depth chart and you're like, well, Harrison Phillips is still behind Vernon Butler, and we believe Vernon Butler to be hot ass. Like, it's not great. Zimmer's the guy that is the wild card. I don't know that there's a single Bills fan who doesn't like Zimmer. Like, I have not come across a Bills fan who doesn't like Zimmer. But again, still a situation where Zimmer might not make the team. Like, you don't know for sure that he's going to make the team. And then as far as like the rest of the front seven, look, we know there's certain people out there who think Daryl Johnson's a lock to make the team. I'd like to see what he can do on defense a little bit now, being in a couple years into the organization. I'd like to see what he can do with some defensive snaps, and he should get some. He should get plenty, right? We know what he brings on special teams, but what can he do on defense for me? And then as far as the linebackers, yeah, Giles Harris, Adams, Markel Lee, like Matakevich, like these are the guys that we're going to see probably throughout the night at linebacker. I'm not really going to be paying attention a ton to linebacker. I mean, maybe for that last spot or two, you're going to have Andre Smith maybe battling out with an Adams, right? Smith, people will say, oh, he's a great special teamer, but let's not forget Adams plays special teams as well. So that one to me is, I'm not too worked up about that, honestly. Like, however the Bills want to go there, I'm kind of good with it, because it's not like Adams to me is going to be a huge loss if the Bills end up cutting him.
Right.
I know people want to read into the fact that he played a ton of defensive snaps for the Texans last year, but the Texans defense was really bad. So like, yes, he has experience, but like, is he any good? Like, I don't know. Right. Before you get your reaction, Kendall, let's get to Dawn's super chat. Says, remember, if you're hoping to trade some of these, you have to move that person up on the depth chart in order to get a team to take the bait. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, Dawn. So I just wonder how much, other than us as fans, how much other teams GMs are looking at these these depth charts for the preseason. I mean, maybe they are. I don't know. So I did find it interesting that they had Daryl Johnson listed as fourth string defensive end behind Hughes, Rousseau, and Obata, who I'm very excited to see Obata. Everyone's very excited to see him. And then you had on the other side, Addison, Epinesa, Basham. I don't think that's a real surprise as far as the depth chart. You're going to see a lot of Epinesa and Basham, so that's not really a surprise to me either. I think the big surprise is seeing Daryl Johnson last. But then again, if Obata's has been as good as he as advertised, then it's not a surprise. And are you going to keep Daryl Johnson just for special teams at a position group where you'd like to keep guys that could all contribute on defense? Going to be interesting. What do you think about this whole front seven? Because it's kind of a jumbled mess right now.
Yeah, it's very crowded in the front seven. I look at it very similarly to how I look at the wide receiver room, where I said, let's take out the guarantees. Let's take out the locks. We don't really need to see a lot of those guys. Let's figure out what's going on with the depth. And I understand a lot of it now for the depth of the defensive end room specifically is more just young guys that we want to see and we're excited about seeing. I do want to see how people like Greg Rousseau, AJ Epinesa, and Boogie Basham rush against first-round draft pick of the Lions, Penei Sewell. That'll be very interesting. I want to see how they fare against him. As for the defensive tackles specifically, I'm not so shocked with the Vernon Butler thing. Like you said, I would prefer to see Harrison up there, but we know the kind of character that Harrison Phillips has. This isn't going to faze him. He's going to continue to work hard, and hopefully he can overcome this adversity like he's overcome the 2 torn ACLs. Like, I do believe in this guy, and I don't think this is the end of his story. But it is an uphill battle right now, according to the depth chart and what we know right now. And on top of that, the financial side of things, it's a lot easier to cut Harrison Phillips financially than it is to cut Vernon Butler. That being said, Dawn is right. It is good to advertise these guys that you may be kind of on a bubble with, because it may keep their trade value where you'd hope it be. I think I've had this read wrong the whole time because I've been using over the cap for Vernon Butler. I thought it was only like a $3 million dead cap hit for Vernon Butler. It's actually 6 if we cut him. So if we trade him, I think it's 4.2. So fingers crossed that it's a trade and Harrison Phillips can usurp that role and it can be Phillips and Zimmer. But if we're keeping Zimmer and Butler better learn how to play the one tech, because we're only going to have one tech on the roster. So definitely concerned about that. On to the Daryl Johnson thing. Same reason why I don't want to see like Hughes and Addison, because I want Johnson to get more reps against higher caliber players. I want to see what he can do on the defensive side of things. We know that this dude, if he's going to make the team, it's because of special teams. But I want to see if he's going to add any more value, because if he can, he could convince the Buffalo Bills to keep 11 defensive linemen and only keep 5 linebackers, because Daryl Johnson can do what a linebacker does in special teams, like we heard Heath Farwell say the other day. And then onto the linebacker room, I'm very, very with you on the back end, where it's like we don't really need to see Edmonds or Milano. I'd be okay with seeing Klein. Not a huge deal with that one. But yeah, I want to see how people like Adams, Medikevich, Dodson, Smith, Giles Harris, I want to see how those guys are going to do against other guys that aren't just the Bills. So most of those guys are going to be carving it out on the special teams side of things, specifically Medikevich and Smith. But I want to see if they can add anything to defense. I've heard that Medikevich has been doing pretty well on the defensive side of the ball, not just special teams stuff. So that's encouraging. But I haven't heard as much about Smith in that way. So I want to see if he can add value on the defensive side of things. And conversely, I know with my eyes, I like what I see from Dodson on the defensive side of things. I want to see if he can do it on the special teams side of things, because if he can do both, I think that dude's a shoo-in for the roster. So I'm definitely going to be zeroing in on that back end of the linebacker room, because I'd say, in my opinion, it's that top 4. It's Edmonds, Milano, Klein, Metakevich, pretty safe in my eyes. And then I don't know if they're going to keep 5 or 6, but if they do, it's between like 5 guys for maybe 1 or 2 spots. So I'm definitely going to be zeroing in on those like last 4 or 5 guys in the linebacker room.
It could be, Matakevich's gonna more than likely make the team. I mean, he's the special teamer. He's kind of like that 4th linebacker behind the starters. Adams versus Dotson is interesting to me because those are the guys that, in theory, can help you out on defense in addition to playing special teams.
Exactly.
I like Dodson personally. I would like to see them keep. If it came down to those two, I'd keep Dodson.
Same.
He's been with the team. I think he's got a little bit more potential on defense. Adams has more experience. I'll give him that. But I think for me right now, unless Adams really impresses in the preseason, my preference would be to keep Dodson.
Same.
But ultimately, it's not a big deal to me either way right there. So finally, let's round out the preview of the depth chart for this game with the secondary. Let's see what Judge had to say.
All right, last but not least, gents, I want to talk about the secondary. Beating a dead horse here, right? Trey White, Teron Johnson, Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer. I don't need to see them. Again, Sean McDermott's probably going to want to throw them out in a game or 2 for a series or 2 just to sort of get them used to tackling again, but I don't need to see it. Some of the things that I'm really interested in seeing is obviously Dane Jackson up against, outside the practice setting up in games. I'd like to see Dane and Levi get some decent runs against the 1s and the 2s of the Detroit Lions, because Dane Jackson last year wasn't all that impressive in training camp, but then he showed up during games when he was called upon on an emergency basis. So could Dane Jackson just be one of those guys who shows up more in a game setting than he does a practice setting? So that's going to be something interesting to look for. I'm really going to keep a close eye on Dane Jackson and also my man Siran Neal here. Matthew Fairburn had that piece for The Athletic that came out this week. Jordan Poyer has been singing Siran Neal's praises. Like, hey, like this dude is a freak physically. Now it's his time to do something on defense and more than just special teams. So watching him in the nickel, seeing if they utilize him on blitzes and things of that nature, just watching Siran Neal, I think is going to be super interesting this preseason as well. And obviously the battle at safety. I hope Hamlin and Johnson get a lot of run. And then obviously I hope Thomas and Thompson get a lot of run. Let those dudes duke it out. One last note for you, Wild Goose, boundary corner on the depth chart. Does that concern you at all? Because he was sort of that inside-outside flex guy. Some people were thinking like maybe he's 1 year development away from being able to take over for Teron Johnson, who's in a contract year. Him being listed on the outside, does that tell you that maybe he's not doing so hot on the inside? And does that cause for concern about developing guys behind Teron Johnson? Because right now on the depth chart, the only one listed is my man, Cam Lewis.
No, he forgot about Siran Neal listed as a slot corner on the depth chart. So, no, but really, look, I'm with him. Like those 4 guys, like let's start with the safeties, right? I think Hamlin, Johnson, Thompson, and Thomas, like all 4 of those guys are going to play a ton, right? I mean, you're probably going to see Johnson and Hamlin, I would guess, likely in the first half, and Thomas and Thompson in the second half, or some variation of that, right? Those are going to be probably your pairings for most of this game. As far as the corners, right? I don't care that Wild Goose is listed as an outside corner. I think that's his natural position, as far as I knew from watching tape of him with Wisconsin. Like he primarily played on the outside for them. So no, I'm not surprised. Should I read into that he's not playing well on the inside? I don't know. Is he even getting reps on the inside? I don't even know, right? Has there been any reporting of that? I don't think that we know for sure. It's not really a huge concern. Cam Lewis, he's been kind of a steady camp player for the Bills. I'm not surprised that he's listed there, but again, they only list 3 guys as a slot, right? They've got Johnson, Neal, and Cam Lewis. I would imagine you're probably going to see Cam Lewis play more slot corner in this game than you will Siran Neal.
Yeah, probably.
But that's just my assumption. And then the other guys I'll be seeing at the corner position, how the reps get split between McLeod and Griffin, right? Who's got maybe the upper hand going into the first preseason game on a roster spot that could be a dark horse candidate, right, to make the team. It's not, it's not likely, but in a group where, you've got Dane Jackson and Levi Wallace and Trey White, and behind them, it's kind of like up in the air as far as like who your boundary corners might be. One of those guys could make a push in this game, and I think those two are likely battling each other out right now for spots on the depth chart, as evidenced by that they're both listed as third, kind of in their respective rows there on the depth chart. So you got McLeod behind White and Wild Goose, and then you've got Griffin behind Wallace and Jackson. So though that battle between McLeod and Griffin could at least give them an upper hand heading into the second and third preseason games, to give them at least an outside chance to make the team. So I'm curious to see and excited to see those guys as well.
So I'm definitely with Steve on the idea of wanting to see Dane Jackson in games, because when we saw him in games last year, he did nothing but show us potential.
This is a good one. I see what he did there. I see what he did there. But so we'll just, your boy Lettuce, it's a good one. I'm so stoked to see Allen beating Goff.
Gotta get that G.
Unfortunately, Allen's not playing. So it's you're going to be stoked to see. Well, I don't think Goff.
Allen on the bench laughing that his team is winning without him even playing.
Yeah, but this is a good play on words here. I like that. Your boy Lettuce, nice one. I'll give you.
I hope it was intentional.
It 100%. If you know your boy Lettuce, he's been a regular of ours. This is the kind of gold we can expect from him, and he is witty, and this is intentional for sure.
So the Wild Goose thing, I think it's funny that Judge really read into it the way he did, because at the end of the day, you got to put the guy somewhere. I think putting him as an outside corner doesn't speak anything less to what he does on the inside. I think if you put him at nickel corner, we'd be saying the same thing, speculating about how he plays on the outside. So I just think, the depth chart just had to be put somewhere. He's coming in again.
So the sick Ruben Webb beating Goff. Is this one going over my head?
So the sick Ruben Webb beating Goff.
I don't know.
Ruben or Ruben? I don't know. This one went over my head as well. Sorry, your boy. I don't know. Are we ruining it? Are we just totally fluffing the joke? Did we miss the punchline? Are we doing a terrible job delivering it?
Probably.
Unfortunate.
Sorry. The first one was gold.
It was good.
So, anyway, continue.
So with Wild Goose, I definitely think it's encouraging to see that he's on the second team at all. I mean, honestly, when we drafted him, I think a lot of us were upset because we didn't draft a cornerback earlier. And we were kind of like, okay, cool, consolation prize. And we went up and scooped Elijah Griffin and Nick McLeod. So it's definitely encouraging to see him on the second string. I don't know if that's kind of just like a chalk thing from the coaching staff just being like, you were the higher draft pick, you've earned it thus far, so we're just going to do this in terms of respect. We're just going to do it this way. And we might see a lot more shuffling after this game because it's going to be more based on recent performances in games and practices. So right now it might just be a little bit chalk. But I'm reading into it as Wild Goose has had a good camp. That's what I'm reading it into it as. I still think he has ability to play slot corner. He has that physicality to his game, kind of like Teron Johnson showed in his rookie year. So I'd like to think he can still do that. And then on top of that, he still adds special teams value because we know how fast the dude is. So definitely excited to see what he's all about in a Bills uniform. As for safeties, I am super excited to see the safety depth because really I am looking at this Jaquan Johnson roster spot. In my opinion, I think Damar Hamlin is safe. I probably shouldn't be feeling this way, but based on our preparation through the draft, we both really loved Damar Hamlin. Couldn't believe that he was still on the board where he was, and we're just overjoyed to see that the Bills scooped him up in the round that they did. So because of all that playing together, and then his relationship with Dane Jackson, I like to think he's just a lock on this squad. It's probably me getting ahead of myself, but I like to think that he's a lock on this squad. So in my eyes, that puts Jaquan Johnson's spot kind of on the hot seat a little bit. So I know he's a great special teamer. Heath Farwell speaks very highly of Jaquan Johnson. So I'm curious to see how he's actually going to play in the safety role, not as a special teamer, but in the safety role, because I love my guy Tariq Thompson from San Diego State, and the dude is a ball hawk. He doesn't just make plays in the secondary and the deep halves of the field. He also comes up and really gets dirty near the line of scrimmage and run support. He's all over 3 levels of the field. I really like his game. So I'm curious to see that battle between him and Jaquan Johnson. And of course, I watched a little bit of Josh Thomas from Appalachian State a couple years back. He's definitely someone to keep an eye on, but I haven't seen enough of him in a Bills uniform where I can really make an informed decision. So I'm excited to get this preseason to actually get that informed decision on him. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what the depth behind Poyer and Hyatt is going to look like, because I don't know if it's going to include Jaquan Johnson or not. So I'm eager to get that answer.
Safety's fun in the preseason because Hyde and Poyer never come off the field in the regular season. So this is really like your only chance, not only chance, but Marlowe played a decent amount last year, but it's a good chance to see some of these guys that you might not otherwise see play at all really during the regular season. So safety is going to be fun to watch. So that pretty much wraps up our preview. If there's any Q&A, if there's anything you guys want to talk about as far as like what you're looking forward to seeing in the game, put it in the comments section. We'll get it up there and we'll talk about it here for maybe like the next 5-10 minutes before we put a wrap on this show. And we will. So let's start here. Chris Janke says, Matthew Fairburn gave some hefty praise on Josh Thomas, said he was getting second team reps over Hamlin and Thompson. Now, is he allowed to say that? I didn't think you were allowed to say. I didn't think
so too, but I've also seen some of the guys saying stuff like this in reports. So I don't know. Maybe they're a little more lax this year. I'm not exactly sure either. But I've also been seeing reports like that, not necessarily on Josh Thomas, but specifically and explicitly saying what teams they're working on. So I'm not sure, but if Chris saw it, I'm going to take his word for it. Chris is definitely trusty on the roster end of things. So definitely going to trust that report for what it's worth. But hey, he might just be getting those looks on the second team because the Bills coaching staff is just doing their due diligence. They got to see how this guy looks with the second team, not just with the third.
Adam Gaze's dog, Steve, if he's in the comments section still, would like this one. Backup linebacker is pretty interesting. Giles Harris is my dark horse roster pick, maybe this year's Delshon Phillips. He's been getting some praise and in some of the reports I've been reading, and he's going to get a lot of playing time in the preseason. So he's definitely a guy that can put his name in the ring for one of those last linebacker spots, especially if the Bills do end up keeping 6. And behind Matakevich and the starting 3, if they do keep 6, you're talking about 2 roster spots. So that could be Dodson, Adams, Lee, Giles. Like, he's got a decent chance to make the team, Smith. So, don't count him out. I think there's a chance for that. So let's see. Truth to Heart says, not trying to be funny, but won't most of these guys look good against the Lions? Who did they have? I will say this. The Lions, they went, at least on the offensive side of the ball for me, I felt like they went from having like a pretty good receiving core to having like a iffy receiving core. Like very, very quickly. I mean, you talk about like just a short time ago, they had Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones. I mean, they obviously got TJ Hawkinson there. They had Marvin Hall doing some kick returning. They had Amendola, for as injury prone as he was still decently reliable. Who's the other like deep threat guy I'm forgetting? I know there's someone I'm forgetting. But in any case, Now their top 2 receivers are Rashard Perryman and Tyrell Williams, guys that are kind of journeymen with some injury history, and Jared Goff there. Now I do like their running backs with DeAndre Swift at the helm, and they picked up Jamal Williams from the Packers. But this is a team that, we all thought was maybe going to go receiver in the draft, but then Penei Sewell kind of fell into their laps and they went that direction. So offensively, I think this team is going to be limited, right? I mean, they have a lot of, it's a hodgepodge group. Geronimo Allison was brought in. They drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown, who could be a good player. They drafted,
I like him.
They drafted Quintez Cephas last year. So it's just a weird mix. Now I like their offensive line.
Right. That's why I want to see the young guys get some reps. That's literally what I was going to say. Their offensive line reads left to right. Taylor Decker, pretty good. Jonah Jackson, still young and developing, pretty good. Frank Ragnow is one of the better centers in the league. Don't know how to pronounce their right guard's name. Not even going to try it.
Vitae,
you want to try it?
Okay. I don't know his first name, but that's
Vitae what I was going to do. And then I guess they're penciling in Penei Sewell as their right tackle. But either way, I really do want to see how Russo and Basham do against those 2 tackles, because those are supposed to be some of the better tackles in the NFL, at least based on the scouting reports on Penei Sewell. So I'm definitely excited to see how our front 7 fares against their starting offensive line. As for the defensive side of the ball, I mean, if anyone was with us for the draft process, you know how much we like Aleem McNeil. So
it's my alum, man, fellow alum.
It'll be cool to see how people like Cody Ford, John Feliciano, I don't know if it's going to be Mitch Morse or Ryan Bates, how they fare against an Aleem McNeil.
Thank you. And then Golden Tate was the guy I was thinking of, who was their slot guy.
I didn't know if that was still what you were referencing. I think it was.
Yeah.
And then in the secondary, I said it earlier, saying that I want, Stevenson, Hodgins, Kumaro, McKenzie, some of these back end wide receivers to get some reps against Team 1. And Team 1 for these guys is Jeff Okudah, who was a really good prospect at Ohio State. Hasn't done so well since being in the league. Still has some promise. And then Amani Uruwarie from Penn State. He was also pretty good, same draft class. But then Ifitu Melifonwu, who we were all about this pre-draft process. So,
I liked the Lions draft a lot. I really did.
Exactly. Yeah. They have some promise to them. Definitely some holes in their roster for sure. But there are going to be some matchups that I'm going to be pretty excited to see, not just, this bill against this bill. It's exciting to see, them going up against different teams.
It really is. And I'm excited. I mean, we're now less than 24 hours away from this game. I mean, we were when we came on the air too, but hey, I'll say it anyway. But yeah, man, I'm excited. I think, not to put him on the spot, but I'm fairly certain Rico's doing a post game tomorrow after.
Yeah, he said he was going to. It's going to be late.
So, Truth to Hearts, here we go, man. Preseason prediction. Truth to Hearts saying Bills 53, Lions 13. Chris says, you guys like everyone's draft because you like all 200 players. That's not true. There are certain drafts I like more than others. I really like the Broncos draft. I like the Lions draft. I did like what the Panthers did as well. Those were 3 teams that really stood out to me as drafts that I liked. So, yeah, I am with you. All right, Bills fans. That should just about do it for Kendall and I tonight. Judge is back on Monday. TBD whether I will be here on Monday. I've got some stuff going on. I'll let everyone know kind of what's going on in due time, but we'll see. Kendall will be here Monday with Judge and me. Most likely I'll be here, so we'll count on that. We'll react to the Lions game, and we'll start getting you ready for the next week of practice and lining you up for the next preseason game, which we'll do another preview for on Thursday. So, Kendall, any final thoughts tonight heading into this Lions game tomorrow?
Nah, man, I'm excited. I love the optimism here in the chat. A bunch of winning scores. Honestly, the Truth to Hearts score has me thinking, oh, that's a big one. No injuries. Please knock on all the wood you got. I'm curious though. Truth to Hearts 55-13. Now I want to know like what the most margin to victory has ever been in any preseason game, because I can't imagine it's over like 10. I feel like preseason games are always like really close, but just terrible football.
The spread
games.
is 1 point. I mean,
like every time it's always awful. Like betting
no
on
one knows
preseason,
what the hell is
like
going.
yeah.
Oh, people do it. They need it.
I know, but why? Because the spread is always, and it always should be like 0.5 every time. So yeah, no, I'm curious. I'm gonna like go look it up. Maybe Chris Janke, our numbers guy, can get on biggest point margin to victory in preseason history.
Probably already knows what it is. All right, everyone. We will leave you with that. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Catch Rico on the post game. Do you have a film room coming up this weekend with Clay, or you guys just did one?
We just did one yesterday. I'm gonna try to do one for this Wednesday. If I can't make it work for this Wednesday, we might pre-record, but we're gonna try to get one out on the 18th on this most recent preseason game. So yeah,
Nice.
Hopefully it's gonna be good. Hopefully Game Pass sticks with us and they don't screw us, and we can actually, use the broadcast film to get some tape out for this game and really assess how the Bills did and some of the depth guys did. So yeah, I'm excited to see if they can come through for us, and hopefully we'll come through for you guys if they come through for us.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to be looking forward to that. And look, football's back. We got preseason game tomorrow. Didn't have any preseason last year, so I'm excited about it. And let's hope the Bills come out on top, even though it's preseason. So until next time for us, we thank everyone from the comments section tonight. Appreciate all your input and comments, and go Bills.
Go Bills.